Well, Herb, we're standing on the position where the old German cutter was.
Yeah, Lorenz was his name. And he used to, well, more or less there was a lot of cutters, the old chaps come in behind him and they used to cut with that old peddling idea, you know, the footwork.
Yes.
But it was here for years, the different ones lived here, but, well, the houses here are all close together, what you can almost see at the moment where they've built in this last 10 or 12, 15 years, whatever.
Yes.
And the old post, of course, it's just down here past this old shack. That was where the post office, and then there was the moonshine place they used to call it, where they make the grog and all this, just past that.
Well, we'll go down and have a look at that in a moment. Can you tell us any more? Can you remember any more about this old German cutter? Did he have any signs up? Did he do anything
he had a big sign up here, Lorenz Opal Cutter. But he had the old time top with the belt underneath and a flat wheel on top.
Yes.
And he could cut for setting with that.
He could, yeah, that's very interesting.
Oh, what he could. He was a very good cutter.
Can't recall the name of any of the other cutters that was around those days?
Yeah, I could tell you later on up here about where they've done most of the cutting up on the edge of the hill there
that's very good.
Where the school was.
Yeah, it's very good.
And
this area here, where we've got the camera now, it was all huts.
There was houses here right through, all down here and right out as far as you go. Well, this was the main part of it, the town through here, down towards...
This new brick building, of course, has only just been put up lately.
That's just been there, yeah. And this place over there's only been there 10 or 12 years. But
we're looking now down the main street, which used to be Nettleton's Flat. There's very little left today, and very few people who understand and know the history of this place. Herb Brown is one of these people who has yet a lot of knowledge of the past history. As we look down there now, we see mullock dumps, which have only been put there in the last few years. But once this was a thriving town, an area with a post office, a school, a boarding house, and many other facilities.
Well, right where I'm pointing now, that's where the old post office was.
Yes.
And that old wilga tree was almost at the back door. And it faced this way and the veranda led out this way. But it was only a three-roomed old bark joint, but still it done the job. And since the Opal become a bit of a price, what they've done all this, come trying digging up looking for some plants or otherwise, you know, what they thought they might have planted in the old days. That's why this went on.
Yes, a lot of that's even been in the last 20 years.
Oh yes, since that really. But that's exactly where the old office was there, because there was none of this. It was all clean, just like where you're standing.
Can you remember what any of the buildings looked like that was around the post office?
Well, which I said, there was just, some of them was only made of bark and bits of iron, and others was just bagged, painted, whitewashed with this sandstone here and that.
Yes.
And that's all it was really, them days.
Have you got any idea, I know this is asking you on the spur of the moment, not giving you much chance to think, but roughly what year did it all close down?
Well, of course, I mean, they lived up here all for, well, into the 50s, 60s, I think, since the last of the old fellas died and left here, see, and then other people come in and kept rebuilding places like these.
Yes. What I really meant, have you got any idea when the post office may have finished up and the school may have finished up?
Oh, no, I wouldn't have an idea at all, but the post office had gone in the... Well, I mean, they had their own post office here. Anyone that lived down here just put their letters in here and the mail picked them up, see? That
Yes.
Really, the right office was up in the town by then. That'd be in the 30s. And yeah, that'd be in the 30s. And of course, mail coming past here, the old coach, they'd pick any letters or parcels, whatever, and take it from here. It was really a bag here them days.
Yes.
But there was quite a lot of men working around here, of course, or living in here, just as they are now.
As we look away down towards Waterford's now, what was the next most important building along that way?
Oh, well, there wasn't much that way, I don't think. There was more or less, you know, just the people that lived here and worked here.
Okay.
Well, this is somewhere around where the old Sly Grog joint was, and I believe the person that had it, his name was Hawkins. And they sold a lot of grog here them days, but they were raided from different places. Angleville, there was police there, or Gadooga, or which. But they were raided a few times. It still carried on, and further up along the road there is where the boarding house was, further along here.
Can you remember the name of the people that run at one stage, the Sly Grog shop?
Well, I just said it. What I know is the names were Hawkins.
Hawkins,
Yeah.
Very good. And now, as you look around, there's absolutely nothing there.
That's it, yeah. Well, this is where George himself told me that where the Cowan family lived. And of course, he was only a boy. He went to school here, and he started to opal buy when he was only 15. He'd walk around with a pocket full of silver, and he'd come out on right, and he finished up one of the greatest judge of opal in the world, black opal.
How many years did he buy here for? Many years?
Oh, 30 or 40 years after. He used to go away and come back down to the city. He had a business in the city, and when he went flat in that, he come back and lived here and died here. Well, he just lived over here just before they took him away from over here when he died, just here about 100 yards over. And the whole hut there. But
there's nothing left now to show that they ever lived here, is there?
No, only a bit of old rubbish where they've been dug out of these holes.
Yes, only the rubbish and nothing else.
That's all. Yeah. So to look at the place, you know, if it was all cleared, it'd house a lot of people. They tell me in the old days that there was 800 people working here on this 3 mile when it broke out, this lunatic hill up here.
800?
800 men working here, yeah. Well, there'd be a lot of families, wouldn't there?
Yes, so that would be probably 12 or 1,400 people living here.
That's true, yes. Well, that's what the old land said. There was 800 people, 800 men working in this hill up here. Of course, it's been flat too, I suppose, but...
And as we look out here in front of us everywhere, that was all huts.
Yes, huts where all the families lived.
And now there's absolutely nothing.
Nothing, only scrub, a little bit of scrub.
One would never think a town ever existed there.
That's right. Well, this is the place where old Fred, when he died, he lived here just before he died, of course. But he was here for years and years.
Fred who? Bodell?
Fred Bodell, yeah.
Yes.
Well, he lived here for years, on and on his own, until he got crippled that way, that an old age, of course. And this is where he was when he finished up dying, old Fred Bodell. But there wasn't many about. There was a house here and one or two down there, but that's all.
They tell me that he was working in the district as a young boy before they even started to mine opal here. Is that true?
He told us, of course, and he come through here. Well, if 1902 or 3, he said he come through the ridge here.
Yeah, he was a man well in his 90s when he passed away.
Yeah, he was 96, wasn't he, or something like that, 96.
Yeah.
But he reckons that he came to tell me, because I worked a lot when he was a shearer. I worked in the sheds with him a lot, and he used to tell me a lot of things about the old days here. And he said he was one of the first, even, of course, he could have been too. But anyway, he brought the Bruce family here in 1909 or 8. He picked them up in the Walgett they were making this way. And he brought them there. He was shearing out of his place there right on the railway line now at Walgett. And he picked all the Bruce families up with their drays and horses and brought them here.
They tell me he made a couple of very good strikes over the years. Do you know much about
Well,
them?
he got 2 big strikes up the Newt, John, which I know of. I knew where he camped up there. And he got a lot of opal even here, just behind us, and up here on the flat. He got opal wherever he went. He was a lucky man, Fred, but He spent it, I suppose, like everyone else did, let it go.
Yeah.
And he broke a lot of oval up to in this hard country, which you couldn't help more or less. But he wasn't a bad old bloke to the town, you know. But he went away a lot, though. He went away shearing a lot, out into Queensland, and he'd turn up again. And this is where he finished up living. He built this whole hut. And, of course, he never died in it, but he died in Walgett, I think it was. Well, straight down in front of us where that bit of clear country is, I believe that's where the Kirkpatrick boarding house was, according to Bruce boys. They lived down there further towards Waterford's, you know, where Waterford's living now. But they went to school over here on the point of the ridge, which I'll show you in a moment, and where the old horse puddlers were here. But,
was there many people at the boarding house?
Oh, it was more or less the boarding house was for the meals only, I'd think, because, you know, them old miners, they never had time to cook a meal for themselves, and she'd put on meals, about 1 and 6 a meal, and that's all it was them days. So they'd sooner go and have a meal than go out to their camp and cook one. Well, this is where the horse puddlers were in here. Well,
can you explain how the horse puddlers worked to us? What worked, how they worked?
They just hooked them, and they had a round of a circle and a long stick across, and they had like a channel in them outside where they used to fill the dirt in and the water all went in there, and they used to have to stop the horse every now and again to let all the puddle out. Well, the long stick with spikes in it, dragging the dirt around. But they had a couple of, that was all right. They used to pull the water over here by whip, you know, long stick and a pole, a long pole, and pull the water down up. She'd come and tip it straight into the puddler.
They must have had a dam there.
No, water underneath, no dams.
Out of the old mine?
Old mines, yeah, all along there it used to run.
Wonder what years, remember what years this
Well,
was?
that was even in the 30s. That was even in the 30s and 40s, I think right up to the 40s. They had a horse puddler there, 1 or 2. I think old Boodle reckoned that the water all used to run down in and run into big piles down, and he blew them up with dynamite so they wouldn't use them. Well, that's true too, because I was down here just after, but that's where they were, the puddlers in there. Just alongside these horse puddlers here, well, there was only one there them days, but old Donald White got a stone here according to old son Bruce, and he was a great mate of his. In fact, they worked together. And they tell me it was a big light stone as big as a cricket ball, just here, somewhere in here. Hardy Bruce, he used to tell me about it because he remembered everything, because they lived just down there. And after that, they got nothing else, only just the one stone. He did, old Donald White.
One big stone?
Yeah, but back that way they got a bit oval. And up above here where this cut is. But that all the water was pulled for them puddling. There was only no, they never had any water from anywhere else. No pumps them days, just an old whip. According to the old hands, they reckon this was the biggest cutting place on the 3 mile here, and he handled most of the stuff off the hill when all the men were working here.
Now this is the northern end of Nettleton's Flat, isn't it? Or the southern end, I should say.
That's it, yes, the southern end,
This
yeah.
is the southern end.
Yeah. Well, the school was over here on the corner, of course, and all the flat down here houses. And right around that side there where that big flat is, that was the recreation ground, football ground, cricket. Tennis courts was over there.
And now there's absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing whatsoever.
Even so, right around here to Frog Hollow, there was houses, huts, I mean, you know, there was nothing decent, but they lived in them, of course. But even when I was a lad here, there used to be 50 or 60 of them camped all around here and right back down up the top of the hill there. old timers.
And now there's only one camp there.
That's all, yeah. Yes, the old 3 Mile, yes.
Do you know anything about any of these cutters that was here? Do you know the type of gear they used?
Well, according to I, they had the old foot type, like the bike wheel type. Just board and ordinary, because I had some of that gear myself after. And that's all I ever known them to have. No motors or anything like that them days. I never thought of.
We're talking about in the 20s and the 30s, are we?
Yeah, right up to the 40s too.
Right up to the 40s.
Yes, that's all I ever seen them use, mostly the old foot type. I think the first man that ever bring the motor cutter into the ridge was Harold Fraser, and that was down there near the other side of Dick's place there next door. And he bought an old Lister motor then, rigged it up there, and he kicked it off, really.
Well, thank you, Herb, for all that information. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. This used to be the 3 Mile recreation ground. Football, cricket, tennis. The tennis courts used to be way over there, the other side near that timber. They had their football ground going straight up, going dead south up there. And their cricket ground and football, of course, they were all combined, and the tennis courts on the other side. But there was a lot of people here, and I suppose they're the sort of places they had for the only place really close.
There was, to look at it now, you wouldn't know anything ever existed there.
No, you would not. But I suppose, you know, if you don't go over there now, you'd find the tennis court butts with the...
Yes, good morning, Herb.
Well, how are you this day? All right.
Not too bad. We've got a lovely day out there on the 9 Mile.
Yes. Well,
this is the first area worked on the 9 Mile, isn't it, here?
This here in the shallow, yes.
Can you tell us how it come about?
Well, really, when they were building this road through Angledale to Walgett, they over in this Blar scrub, there's a chap by the name of Gallagher. He was contracting, I think, further over here on the fences where he found the first trace in the gravel over here. And they never bothered about it. They didn't really know what it was. He told me himself, one of the Gallagher's boys. They never bothered about it, but years after, some old bloke come from the other side of Moree there somewhere, and he come down here. And he started to dig around and got a bit of opal here, and they went away, and for years after, they kept coming in, and that's how it really got on. Well,
the first workings of the actual 9 Mile up the hill started years later.
That's right, over the hill here. That's about 1922, I think, somewhere around there it started. So Bob Becker told me, and he was born and bred here. And I was here myself when that over the ridge here started. But here only this, latter years, 15 years, they got more opal, I think, than they did in the old days, in this old ground down here below us. And there was somewhere down here where these pegs are, where old Jim Dennis found the big log with the opal lying alongside of it. This young Jim showed me just down about the centre there somewhere, and it was all been burnt. Nobody'd never know how long it lied there, burnt the log, and all the opal was all crazed lying alongside the log. Only about 2 foot under the loom there, or 18 inches, something like that. But
it appears that this log had trapped the opal as it had been washed down
yes,
from the hill.
From here, where we're standing now, come out of the hill, washed out, right down anyway. I reckon there's a lot of opal way down near the scrub there, yet in that loom.
Way down the hill there?
Yes, way down where the scrub is there.
Yeah, all down where we can see in the camera now.
Yeah, well, look at the mighty stones that got here a few years back, because you knew all about that too, you were here. And there were stones worth, $1,200 to $1,500 a carat was got in that loom.
Yes, and today's prices, they'd be worth a lot more, some of them.
Oh, well, they would. And then it broke a bit, and it went all around that side of the ridge, see, and run into the sandstone, and carried on right up, lit the ridge up, and then went straight over the Western Fall, and that's where some of the good claims were, McNeil's and old Mick O'Connor's.
Can you tell us the names of some of the people you may remember just on the spur of the moment who got good stones out here, on this shallow where we're talking about now?
Well, I believe Percy James got about the best one. He's round here somewhere we're standing. He's supposed to dig it here, but I believe that he was carrying logs from up the hill here somewhere to log up here, and on the pad he saw a little tin, a Zambuck tin. And he thought to himself, now I'll have a look at this when I come back. And he did. He kicked over and this big stone was in it. And it appeared years ago here that when the old Billy Gale lived here, that he lost a big stone here somewhere in a tin, something similar. But whether it's right, I don't know. And it was a beautiful stone in here, what he found.
Yes. What about other stones that was dug out of the shallow, individual stones
well, I mean,
under the loom?
There's stones got here, look, it make you think. Look at Bobby Ward got here, along here, in the old ground, the old dirt.
Yes.
And there's some dark chaps from Gadooga. They were in just over there somewhere. They're only about 2'6", 3 feet.
Of course, Bobby Ward was only about 10 years ago, and this is 1982 now.
That's right. And look at the opal he got here.
He got a power of opal,
Oh,
we know
beautiful. I seen it, a beautiful opal. Some of the best I ever looked at, I think, coming out of this shallow here.
And there was George who? Was it got a beautiful stone here?
George O'Connell. And then there's another chap by the name of Baker. He got all, I mean, there's quite a few of them down there. There's a lot of claims pegged. And there's quite a few of them got opal and they never ever said anything.
Well, George O'Connell, he sold his stone to the gem collector at Wagga, Jimmy Conomos, didn't he?
I believe he did, yes. Yes, it was a nice stone. I seen that. But I seen one crack one here, I think, copped a lot of them, I think. Of course, I think it either been in a fire or something like that, you know, probably hundreds of years ago. It was got down there too. And I don't know, they tell me some good stone got on edge of Markham's claim up here. Well, Percy James did get a lot of opal there on the edge of Markham's, just up the ridge here. And further along, like round the shallow, there's some good opal. Nothing like this here, though. Seemed to be all the best of it light on the eastern side here. And when it got to the top of the ridge, it went over onto the western for all the good claims. Well, most places on the ridge here, I'd reckon, on the eastern side where all the best of the shallow ground was, the best opal, angled, cantful. Anywhere, I think, in the field, down on the flat, all the eastern side, the shallow country.
We're now looking at the first field on the eastern side of the 9 Mile that was ever worked, the gravel section that Herb has just been telling us all about. As we look into the distance, we can see the silt heaps that he was referring to. He gave us his opinion of them and what he believes that still may be there. You can see a miners' camp now that was moved in recent years.
Well, there was only one cutter that I knew of here years ago. Was a lady, Mrs. Thorley, and she lived here, just in front of us here. And of course, there was bark huts all the way along this fence where we're standing now, right around the ridge. And just up a bit in front of it, there was an old beer place just up the ridge, and further up there was a store. Tom Owen used to come out and open it up every morning and go home at night. He had an old T-model Ford. And of course, I mean, there was a lot of people there. Old Jack Reynolds, old Deffy Reynolds, we used to call him. He was up there, got a lot of opal up on top of the ridge. But Billy Kite got the big stone over here in front of us. Big light stone. But he never got much money, somewhere about 300 for it them days, so it must have been good to get that price for it.
Can you tell us anything else about that stone?
Well, I seen it. It was about 1 3/4 inches long, and I forget it was about 1 inch wide. It was like a big tooth. And it was all opal, of course. And he took it down to Sydney with him, because Billy liked the grog a lot, and he stayed at the People's Palace, and he lost the stone. But I think he just got back to the ridge and the stone turned up. So he was very fortunate with these big opal.
Yes. How many lady cutters was there around Lightning Ridge in your day? Was she the only one?
She's the only one I'd ever remember in my time here. That's right. And she was out here on her, like, I mean, there were women living out here, but she was the only one that done any cutting, was straight here in front of her. She had an old bark humpy up here.
Was she any good of a cutter?
Oh, she made money, like. Oh, she was a good cutter. Had good eyesight. Right here where we're standing now at the moment, there used to be a old beer shop. A couple of brothers, Moses brothers we used to call them. But they never lasted long. They left the place very quick. I don't know, there was Jews or something. And they never done any work. I know that. They never sunk any holes or anything, but they were here a couple of years and cleared off, and somebody else took it. Oh, I forget. They had a bit of a shop here, and then old Tom Irwin, he come out and built his shop up on the top of the hill here. And
what year, roughly, were the Moses here?
Well, I'd reckon it was about 22.
Almost
23, yeah, 22. 3, both. And, of course, there was camps all the way down the fence here, huts all through the fence. But there's a lot of people here, come and going every week. But they'd mostly push bikes or horse and sulky days. I know old Tom Judd had a claim up here on the top of the hill, and he had the pub in the ridge, and he used to drive out every morning and back home every afternoon.
The Lightning Ridge, right into town.
Yeah.
He was a publican in town, and he lived on the 9 Mile.
Worked here.
He worked there.
Well, here where I'm pointing now, I'm sure that's where old Tom Burrs had the claim. It was a good claim too, just in front. And he was one of the first when this top of this ridge broke out in about 1921 or 2, something like that it was. But then there's claims down here about the aeroplane claim, and Tom Judd was down there too. He had a claim that was named a claim that I forget now, but they all run along the top of the ridge here. And the best claim of the lot was over on the Western Fall. And it was Tom McNeil and Mick O'Connor's. I think that was the best claim out here on the Western Fall over there. And old Smiler, he was alongside, and he got the patch over right in the middle of the shaft, and that's the only oval he got, right in the middle of the shaft when he bottomed it.
Amazing, eh?
Yeah. Well, just behind where you're standing, that's where Tom Irwin's store was, and of course after that old fold come and built out over here amongst those trees, old fold kite. And he lived on and off here for years. Well, when the 9 Mile finished, they pulled everything down, shifted back to the ridge, and that was the finish.
This store here, Irwin's store, there must have been a fair bit of a community here.
Oh, well, there were. A lot of people working, a lot of men, I mean to say, but see, there's a lot camped down on that western side too.
Yes.
And they used to bring the stuff out in the morning and open the shop up here, this little store he had, well, and go back again at night.
Is that the same gentleman that had the old store up at Old Town, is it?
No, he had the one in the ridge in the main street there. He had the big shop where young Bruce lives.
Oh, yes.
Peter Bruce lives.
What other buildings was here? There was a restaurant, wasn't there?
Well, there was a eating house down here, belonged to Johnson's, Robinson, I should say. Mrs. Robertson had it. Well, it was handy sort of a place for the miners. Well, it only cost 1 6 to feed them days, and of course, instead of going home to their camp and making a feed, they'd pull in Mrs. Robbo's. She done all right, 1 6 a meal.
Can you tell us what the restaurant looked like? What was built
Well, it
out
was
of?
more or less it was bagged wall, Eshin, and painted with sandstone, you know, like mixed up, this red and white sandstone mixed up, and she had all the wall you couldn't see through it, or it was windproof or rainproof, matter of fact, putting lime amongst it. But she had 2 or 3 tables there, and the miners, they'd have their meals there. That's all they wanted. 1 6 a meal was a... yeah.
Just a view of some of the workings on top of the 9 Mile here at Lightning Ridge. Some of the very old famous claims all along the top of this ridge. This is a modern camp. When I use the term modern, I mean a late camp at Lightning Ridge. It's been built in the last 10 years up here on the 9 Mile field.
What of it, I think now, yeah, that'd be in the 20s. Well, 25 or 25, I'd reckon. Well, I think myself that when you're right,
Yep.
I think myself this was the best. Well, it was noted the best claim Tom McNeil and Mick O'Connor's out of here on the edge of this cut on that side of it. And I remember seeing a lot of opal. It's a long time ago. I remember good opal too. And this bit of a cut that Gale's had in here, it shot right up there within 6-8 feet of the surface. But anyway, they've put a cut in, they got some money out of it lately. And it shot right out too. But
This is on the western side of the field.
that's the western side, yeah.
It appears that the opal at the 9 Mile run up the western side and up the eastern side.
That's right. Right along there, the west, and over here. And the east, all that shallow stuff.
Yes, and this cut now has just been put in the last year or so.
Yeah, you're right. Well, see, I remember coming along and they had it all covered over with this rubbish here, a lot of dirt along here somewhere, you know, where this cut is. There's an old chap come from Brewer, and I said there's about 6 inches of old dirt under there. And he got all this stuff. It took him weeks, hand with hand. He got a bit of a way. The first bit of dirt he got an 80-pound stone under it.
Yeah. How long ago would that be, Herb?
Oh, that'll be 30 years ago anyhow, easily, yeah. But they finished getting this. Somebody else took all it off with the front end loader when they brought them here then. And they cleaned this bit of dirt up and got a lot of money out of it. Yeah. See, just the 6 inches of dirt left here from the old days. Come from underneath, of course.
What other good claims was close by here?
Well, just here, the Germans was just up past the little orange tree up there, on the right of it. That was about the best. Well, it goes back to Markham's then. Well, there's another one over here right down on that fall. What is his name? Oh, that was a good claim too, just over here. Yeah. Now this old fellow used to have it years ago. But anyway, I forget his name, but just over there where those trees are, they got it deep down there too. Well,
is that what they call Sebastian?
That's him. That's the same man.
Do you know anything about that gentleman?
Yeah, knew him well. He's a great old man.
Tell us what you know about him.
Well, Andy Bastian was his name, Andy Bastian. Well, he come here. Somebody else had the claim. He come here, Andy, and of course, he was a younger man. I think he's dead now anyway, but he come here and he went in down there and got a lot of money. We got a lot of money them days. And he went away for years, and he come back here, about 12, 14 years ago, and he come to the Nobby. And blow me if he didn't get a patch up there in the shallow. Hardly never seen him since. I think he was too old, he might have died. Andy Bastian was his name. Well, there's a little bit of opal got out, not much. It scattered a bit from there on. But they were about the best claims, the Germans, Burroughs, O'Connor's, and Markham's. Aeroplane, they call it down in old Frenchies. But I think O'Connor's was the best claim.
All black opal here in O'Connor's?
Yeah. Oh, we puddled here years after, his brother and I. We got 2 or 3 stones, they just like gravel, you wouldn't credit.
Yes.
Some beautiful opal, a lot of opal in the black, you know, not a sign of sand or anything else on it.
Nice pattern?
Oh, beautiful, and it come off. Because I reckon we got £180 for a stone them days. It was a lot of money. A few years back when the puddling started here, it was a lot of money, yeah. Well, we got 180. I think it was only about 4 or 5 carat.
How much a carat today?
You put it up around at 12 or 1400, no trouble, dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was noted there. Old Tom had tins of it, you know. And, of course, he was an old man when he's here, old Tom McNeil. It's a strange thing when they bought him all here. Old Mick O'Connor, he went away shearing. He left the opal and went away shearing.
Tell us about it.
And while he's away, old McNeil, old Tom, got onto the opal. Anyway, he come back again and he went in and they got a heap of it, see. And away he went again. While he's away again, Tom gets another heap. So it's a good claim, all right. I'd fancy a man going away shooting and right on opal sticking in the face like this claim here. Well, that's the things they'd done in the old days. It wasn't much. They reckoned they'd sooner be out chasing sheep than getting their money easy like an opal.
This 9 Mile opal was a little special, I think.
It was.
What I've seen it in the few years I've lived at Lightning Ridge, it seems to be a very clean type of opal with plenty of meat on it.
That's right, then, yes. See, that stone that Percy James got over there, well, I wouldn't know how much that stone would be worth if it was 80 here today.
Could you tell us a little about the stone?
Well, I forget now really how you could fit in it. You had a little tin and it could just fit in it neat. And it had, what you say, a lot of opal, dead on the black, big pattern, orange and red. It was a beautiful stone. I think he sold it for 250 quid. So there's one stone that nobody knows where's gone, you know. You wouldn't know where it was. Well, yeah. You wouldn't put a price on it at the moment, I don't think.
Right where the camera is pointing now, with that red sandstone on the right-hand side of the cut, was the richest part of this claim of O'Neill's, this famous claim on the 9 Mile.
From here where Lenny Cran's cut is, was Markham's, downhill way. Markham Brothers, I used to call them, but they got a lot of opal here too. It was one of the best claims on this side. And of course, the kites, they done a lot of work below it. And there's a lot of good opal noodle on the dirt here. It was odd stones, a lot of pots and only odd stones amongst them. But what was, they were good ones. And the Gales, they were another claim here, but I think that was mostly pots as far as I can remember. Bags of it. And then it jumped, of course, up on the top of the hill to the Germans here then, and that was the finish, and over the west side.
Can you tell us anything about Markham's? Were they brothers or family?
Yeah, they were two brothers come here. They were only a young fellow then. Two brothers, Markham Brothers we used to call them. I don't know where they come, it's that far back. I don't remember where they come from or where they went to after they finished here. But,
do you see any of the opal?
well, we was noodling here when we was brats, you know, young fellas, Molyneux and I, Arthur, and we'd come out here noodling on their claim, and they was all pleased to come for you to come out and have a go. Where they were getting, they'd come and tip the dirt for you. Yeah. But they had pretty good eyes. They could seem to, you know, got all the good stones out. We used to get the bluey greens, and they wasn't worth much then.
Today is the 20th of June, 1982. This is the first visit of the Historical Society out onto the 3 Mile Flat. Today they are going to look around Fred Bodell's old camp and take various notes and information about this camp and compile it for future generations.
I remember about 20 to 25 years ago, the wife and I came out here, and we were on a dump up at the 3 Mile, and a voice sit behind us said, "What the bloody hell are you doing on my mine?" And lo and behold, it was old Harry. Not Harry, Boodle. And old Boodle then took us down to his hut. And his hut in those days was very much the same as it is now, except I don't think this tall tank was here. I think it was just the smaller one. And his spouting in those days wasn't the metal that it is now. It was made out of bark, and the bark came along out and down and into the tank. And he invited us to have a cup of tea, and I had a look at his tank water, and the water looked like it was tea already. And the wife knocked back the cup of tea, but that didn't worry me very much. I, being the friendly old rough old type that I was and still am, I had the cup of tea with old Boodle in his shack here, and I can remember this day my wife sitting there looking aghast at me having this cup of tea and sitting on this great pile of newspapers. There was no chairs or nothing in old Fred's place in those days, hardly, and but he was a thorough old gentleman, a very friendly guy indeed, and I certainly feel that his passing away, some of the history and the character of the ridge has departed with him. Okay. Pat, we're standing in front of old Fred Bedell's place, and I suppose that you'd know as much about old Fred Bedell as anybody around here today. Have you got any recollections of him much at all?
Yes, very clear ones. Actually, he's one of the old fellows, one of the earliest characters or people we met at the Ridge. I mean, one of the first, I think, because he was so close to us. And I remember the chap from whom we bought the place said, you know, there's just a few miners around, and in the odd time they'll help you out with things. And we found Fred helped us with crutching a couple of times, and you know, he used to come down and we'd come up at times. And, I just remember, I'll say this little thing, it's nothing important, but being a newcomer to the Ridge, I, you know, did a little bit of fossicking around, and I picked up a bit of angel stone. I didn't know what it was, of course, with little bits of colour in it, and I very excitedly ran over to the shed where all the men were, and Fred was there too, and I said, look what I found, it's lovely, look at that colour. And he said, yes, he just took it from me, crack, 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 yes, he said, yes, it's no good, Dad, it was just rusted out, and I just saw this lovely thing, yes, going to waste. But I remember Fred so clearly, there's always a bright smile on his face. He was a very pleasant fellow. Do you remember him? Oh,
quite a bit. I can remember the day I came out here. I can still see his old shovel and rake sitting there, and with the natural wood stick handles, all wriggly. You know, he never had a commercial type handle in anything, as far as I could see around
He'd do
this
everything
place.
for himself. Yeah. Everything for himself. He was here, and Don King was just over there, and they were so handy.
But did he live here all the time, or did he move around? Was this his house for the duration of the period that he was here?
I think for the duration of the period he was here, that to my knowledge, he always lived here, nowhere else. Yes.
How long would he have been here?
Oh, well...
From what, before
I
the
think
First
he used to
World
work.
War?
He used to work with Charlie Nettleton,
Yeah.
Chums, before the First World War.
Where did Charlie
He
live?
came
Would
about
he have been-
1950,
Where would Charlie
40
have lived?
years.
I don't know where Charlie lived.
Would he have been in a camp?
Oh
in a
yes,
tent?
but
Yeah, he would have
yes,
had a
but
camp.
I've forgotten. I don't. Do you know where Charlie Nettleton's camp was? No.
When
No,
did
we'll
he
find
die?
out about it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, I can't remember the exact date, but
I was going
I've got
7
it, you
years
know.
ago.
What were the circumstances of his death?
Who, Charles?
No,
No,
Fred.
Fred.
Oh, he just died of old
Oh,
age.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, just
Around
our
here,
age.
or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Of course, this is when the Governor General, Lord Casey, came to see him here,
yes.
and the council graded a road.
I remember that so
yes.
well. I mean,
It
it's
was
the
a lot.
first time the road had ever been graded.
And Mick
all the
McAvoy
fuss-
was wearing white gloves, the policeman.
all the
Yes.
fuss they went to, you know, because the Governor General had to come around and
Yes,
see a bit
yes.
of the local.
The only thing the council ever did.
Yes,
Really?
yes, it was
Finding it.
incredible.
What were the circumstances of that when he...
He made it wasn't a regal visit or vice-regal visit. He wanted to come and see Lightning Ridge, but he was still Governor General at the time.
let's see.
And he and his wife came here, and they had their photographs standing
That's right.
outside this hut.
That's right. And Dr. Everett, remember him coming?
Yes.
I remember saying, was it to Fred, Dr. Everett, oh, you're the new doctor here, are you? That's about as much as it.
I hope he
Do
didn't
we
get
have any of
hysterical.
Bourbon is a more natural.
Bourbon is much
Would
Yes,
this have been
yes, I
one of
think
his, this heap over here been one of his shafts? One
I
of his
really
sources?
don't know, because even way back in those days, that shaft was only a rubbish dump when
Really?
for as far back as I
Really?
can remember, yeah. Yes, that was.
But I think not too far. Yes, he had a little.
No, it was
Mines
just up,
around
just up.
everything.
Well,
Beyond
I
the
suppose
sea.
we walked. This was 20 odd years ago. I suppose we walked quarter of a mile from where we were to here
Right.
to have that cup of tea that we had with him. You know.
Tell us about that.
I told what's that about it before.
Yeah.
It was on the flat and not far from here, you know. It was only, I can remember sort of coming over, up and over the little rise, so it must have just been on the other side of that little rise over there, and we came down in here and had this cup of tea sitting on a great bunch of newspapers, and he pushed everything else out of the road and said, sit down, lady, to my wife. And he brought out his little tin of opals, and he showed my wife this one that was his precious, his lady, and it was a little blue solid, and no other colour in it as far as I can remember but blue, but he reckoned it was his blue lady and he'd never part with it. What happened to that in the long run I really don't know. But they were some of the first opals my wife and I ever saw on the Lightning Ridge firm.
Yes.
Ready?
Is that Lynn?
Oh, just a little story Boodle told me many years ago. It must be near 20 years today. I was inquiring about the life and the history of Charlie Nettleton. I was interested in writing a little bit of history about Charlie at the time. And of course, whether this story's true or fictional, I don't know, but one of the things he said about Charlie was he was laying in bed one day, or probably one morning, I presume, and used to smoke a big bendy pipe. He put his hand under the bed to grab the pipe where he used to keep it, put his finger straight down a snake's mouth, believe it or not. Instead of trying to fix the finger up with a tourniquet, he got the tomahawk and chopped it off. According to Boodle, of course. But he told the story so convincingly that you could not believe it.
This is the Lightning Ridge Historical Society expedition to find out a little bit about the town of Lightning Ridge. We're now standing in Opal Street, looking from north to south. From the Digger's Rest, we can see up through Opal Street. We've engaged the help of Mr. Herb Brown this morning, and we're going to look at some of the houses and talk about something of the past of the ridge and some of the characters, some of the opal dealers. Well, Herb, we're here on Opal Street still. This house over in the background here was one of the old miners. Can you tell us something about
Well,
it?
this is where the hornet lived. He come in, stuck a bit of a brick place. He carted all the bricks like to this top from down here and made all his own mud. And he built a place like a hornet's nest.
Really?
And that's how he become the hornet, see?
Was he here for very long? Or?
Oh, he come here and went away 2 or 3 times. He went to the war. He was cooking in the army. He come back again after, and he went over to Gaduga cooking at the hotel over there. And he come back and he found a bit of a ration and shallow workings up here. He was everywhere. He's like a hornet.
And what happened to him? Is he still around?
No, he died. He dropped dead here in this hut here.
Is he buried locally?
Yeah.
Right.
He died here in this, where this place is here now.
And who was he associated with? Any of
Well,
his-
he had no relations, I don't think, in Australia. He come from England, of course, but he had no. Bob Molyneux was one of his greatest
Oh,
mates.
yeah.
Yeah, you know Bob.
Yeah, right.
But he had a lot of mates, old Jack.
Did he find any exciting opals?
Well, he did in all this shallow country around here, different places, 6 mile, 9 mile, and up here he started this Hornet's Rush up here, they call it.
Hornet's Rush.
They're all that shallow ground. He was like a rabbit. He used to like the shallow ground, see, but he got a lot of opal in his day, yeah.
And how long would this camp have actually been here?
Well,
Can you give us a date? It's now.
No, well, I'd be.
For the record, it's July 1982.
Well, it'd be back in when he was here from the 40s. It'd have to
40s.
be.
So
Yes.
we're looking at something like 40 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, see, Jack went away a long time, and there's other people come into it and sort of.
Sure. And for all we know, it could be inhabited now.
There's two, I think. Yeah.
Okay then, maybe we can move on to something else now. Well, Herb, there must be a number of other things that we missed about the Hornet.
Well-
Did he cut opal?
He did. He wasn't a bad cutter, and he bought a lot of rubbish. And I used to buy in the rough, and he'd cut it himself, and he was making, doing real well out of it. He fluked a lot of good stones out of all this potch and colour he used to buy. Well, I'll tell you something, he kept a lot of them going here for a bit, that couldn't sell their weak opal.
Right.
Or their rubbish, whatever you like to call it. But Johnny used to buy it, and he'd get rid of it.
Right.
He done a good job of cutting too. He learnt himself, of course, here.
He used to ride around on a bicycle, I
Yeah,
understand.
he had a bike. He was a push bike, went right up till he died pretty well.
Right.
Yeah, and I think he was 74 when he died.
Did a lot of the early miners use bicycles?
Oh, well, there's all bikes here years ago. You go down there to the billiard room in the old days, on Saturday afternoon, there'd be 60, 70 push bikes there.
Really?
Mm.
And
All in off the 3 Mile, all around here, All the pensioners and not only...
what about horses? Did they use horses? Mate?
Well, mostly them people that lived in the town, they had the carts and horses, them days, but the blokes that lived out of town, like the 3 Mile, 4 Mile, and all them places when they were doing a bit of gouging, they all push bike.
I guess horses drink water.
Yes.
I understand too that he was involved in the bowls near there.
Yes, he was. He was a very popular man in the bowls club down here.
And what was the bowling club like in those days?
Well, I mean, it's not much different to what it is really now.
Right.
So he was here when we kicked off. And he was one of the first members of on it. And he became a good bowler.
Right.
Well, he's a very popular man.
Okay, Herb, well, perhaps we'll move on to something else. Well, we're still on Opal Street. This is one of the very early houses, I understand, Herb. Maybe you can give us a little bit of background on it.
Well, Phil Brady, he was a gentleman, I think. He was an opal buyer, and he come from around the cliffs, I think. Well, I believe. White Cliffs, yeah. He was an Irishman, Australian boy, but he's real Irish and a tough man with it. But they tell me in the old days he used to go and buy a lot of stuff in the rough, and he'd sing out to them down the old, send up your opal, real Irish he was. So, and they'd send up some stuff, and they'd say, how much? They say, well, put a price on it, I'd give you half. Yeah, that was his way.
A real wheeler and dealer, eh?
Yeah, well, he'd send the money back down the bucket, then that was it.
And did this was his house, how did this house come about, do you know?
I think he was I believe that he was the man that built the place first off when he come here from the cliffs. And he left and went back to Sydney and took his family back there, but there was a lot of people in it after him, see.
Right.
Fields, there was a big family of Fields. They were in the 1920 when we come here. Big family there lived. And they had a lot of their kids here went to school with us, see.
And the Hornets house just up the road, would that have been built at roughly the same time?
Oh, no, that's years after the Hornets, yeah, years
This
after.
one was after Hornets?
No, this was years before.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
oh, God, yeah.
So roughly what date was
Well,
that?
I'd reckon the Hornets should be, it'd be built 20 to 30 years before the Hornets.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're looking at around the early, the late
Well, when this,
1918.
well, it's
First World War time.
when this town was surveyed, see, that's when they were built,
I
this
see.
place in the B&A.
Right. So we'd have had the old dirt road in from Walgett
That's right,
here.
this is the main coach
We
road.
had
to
the Hornets
Walgett.
over there. This one, Brady, you
Yeah,
say?
Brady.
Just down the road there are other houses. Now, tell us a bit more about Brady if you can. Did he was
Well-
he involved with the other miners much?
No, he was a man that stuck to himself. He was very,
A lone operator.
Yeah,
Right.
man had a quid them days, see.
And did he stay in the ridge for very long? Did he?
Well, he left here. He took the family back to Sydney. He used to come up every now and again, every 2 or 3 months, buying, you know.
Right.
And that was his idea. Well, see, there a lot of them done that them days. They was always looking for sweet cops, and they heard of a big field breaking out. Well, they'd be buying it with a bucket.
Right.
I see they got it for nothing them days. And they'd take it all down to Sydney and cut it then, see?
They'd actually cut it in Sydney?
Yeah, buy it in the
up
rough
here.
and cut it in the city. The lad, one of our field boys was a good cutter too. He learned to cut here. Their cutting shop was just here on the right.
Right.
Down there where them trees are, that's where they had cutting place. But although he was a tough man, they used to talk about him for years, how tough he was.
And tell us a bit more about the house. Was there anyone else of
Well,
repute lived there? Or?
No, not the old Ernie Ward and Percy James and old Cy Morris and, oh God, and that old chap that wrote the book, he lived there for a while. This from Narrabri, wrote the book about Lightning Ridge.
Oh, I see, the Lightning Ridge book. Right.
Mm. He lived there for a while too. He used to come up here and stay 2 or 3 months. That's where he used to live and got all the information from him about the ridge. Well, he's the only true man. I don't know his name, but I forget
Douglas,
his name.
was it?
No.
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
But anyway,
Mm.
he's only true what we could gather. Bruce boys and I could gather, tell the truth about the place, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it would be hard to sift out the truth, I guess, from a lot of the
Oh,
stories.
from other that, yeah, everyone had a different idea.
Right. So you
And
can cut there and then. Now, 30-odd yards further down the road on the opposite side, we have another old house. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about this one.
over here.
No, just over behind us.
Oh,
here.
well, I mean, in the old days, that's the first thing. I think this was one of the first places they to go under, you know, to go up, because they needed a bush nursery in the old days. There were no doctors here.
Right. So this was the actual bush nurse's residence, was it?
That's right. There was always a nurse here. They told me right back in the First War there was a nurse here.
Right.
And right when we come in 1920, well, there were some nurses that did come here. They were as good as doctors, really.
Can you remember any of the names?
Oh, I can, yeah. There was one doctor, but Nurse Mooring was one, and Sister, I mean, I'll get right on. There's that many been here.
Right, never mind. Never mind.
Yeah,
I'm sure
well, that many that's
the
been
names
here, but
fly.
I forget, it's that long ago. But anyway, they used to get one here every 2 or 3 years in here. And
It's
that's
an
how it went on.
interesting looking building. Was the veranda there when you
Yes,
came
well,
out?
that was all closed in since they bought the place here. The B&A give it away, and they closed it all in.
Oh, I see. So there was a small house in
Yeah,
there with the veranda
around it, yeah.
and it's been enclosed since to
Yeah.
enlarge it, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's a place that they did want in the old days, being no doctor around. See, they wanted a bush nest in these outlandish places, you know.
Can you remember any stories about the people
No.
involved with the bush nurses then? Or?
No.
Oh, well, never mind. Taking up another point, how did the nurses get their finance? How did they manage to exist?
They got a little assistance from the government, but mostly they used to have dances and, you know, sports and all that here for the B&A, they call it them days. And for a lot of things went on.
I understand there was an instance where the fellows got together and...
Yes, well, that's when they couldn't get any money from the government. They got together and decided to take a claim for the B&A down to 3 Mile. Well, they done all right out of it. They kept it a year or two longer anyhow. But that, you keep going back to the government and getting, you know, a loan off the government, as they called it then. But still, that's kept them here. A long time we didn't have a nurse here too.
What
Different
did you do
time.
in those days? If someone was
Well,
hurt, that was it, was it?
That was it. They died or went to the nearest doctor. Well, Walgett probably was the nearest.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's the old bush nurses' home, and here's the new. there's some difference. We understand that, yeah, sure. I understand that the new building went up over the last 5 or 6 years.
That's right, yeah.
We've now got 2 bush nurses.
Yes.
And of course the whole face of the ridge is changing. And that's one example.
My words, it made a big difference this last 20 years here. Well,
considering that the 2 houses that we've seen so far and one other will be owned. We've moved round down the road about 100 yards, and this is Mrs. Donnelly's old house, I understand.
Probably, yes.
Now tell us...
She's someone we didn't see much of, Mrs. Donnelly. She always kept to herself and practically lived there on her own. That was back 1920, but she stopped there somewhere around the 30s, and then she disappeared too. Well, there's been a lot of people in it since, on and off, you know.
So we don't really know
No.
where it originated.
No, well, it's one of the first plays like the old B&A and Brady's. That would be one of the first plays.